Hey everyone, welcome back to the second video in our series of how to make cold process soap. In this video we are going to go over soapcalc.net, how to use their soap calculator. In the first video we went over the basic chemistry behind soap, giving you the basic understanding of what it is that you're actually doing on soapcalc.net, just so that you can design and create and build your own recipes. So in this video we're going to go through soapcalc, doing step by step, going through and explaining all of the different functions for you. And we're also going to punch in that recipe that we will use in our final video of this series of the cold process soap recipe that we'll use. So my name is Darlene. I am the owner and creator of Body Heaven Soaps. If you are a previous subscriber to this channel, welcome back and thank you for all your support. If you are new to this channel and this is something that interests you, please hit that subscribe button and prevents you from missing future videos. You can hit that little bell so you're notified when we upload new videos. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up to help support my channel. All right, let's get into it. Calc.net, as you can see here. And when you first get there, this is the page you're going to see. It's going to say welcome to SoapCalc. SoapCalc under new ownership. It's going to go through all of this. Up top here, getting started. It can also SoapCalc directions to walk you through it if you forget anything from this video, or you can simply just come back to this video and watch it again. We're going to go right to the recipe calculator. So when you click on recipe calculator, you're going to get to this page. Getting started and detailed instructions are right here again for you, okay? You'll notice that SoapCalc is numbered 1, 2, 3, and it's all in order. So we're going to do this in order. So first of all, our type of lye. Okay, so we did talk about it in the first video about the sodium hydroxide and the potassium hydroxide. One was for hard soap bars and the other for liquid. So if you click here, it does give you that information. We're going to stick with the sodium hydroxide because that is for our hard bars of soap, which we are working on. So once again, you just click on the number and it gives you the information for that column. So we're going to leave it on the sodium hydroxide, the NaOH. Okay, weight of oils. Now, I never use pounds. I am going to use in this recipe a 2-pound mold, and that will be the mold that we use in our final video for this series. But I usually always go in ounces. So we're going to switch that to ounces. I know that it is a 2-pound mold. Now, in saying that, that's 2 pounds of oils, so 32 ounces. At the end, you're going to have your lye, your fragrance oils, and the water you're going to add into your recipe. So therefore, your total recipe weight is going to be more than that 32 ounces. I tend to always do my weight of oils for the size of my mold because I do tops and things like that. So I use that extra soap to make that fancy design on top. So, and I also do soap dough. So sometimes I will use any excess that I have. I will put that into my containers and package that for using for soap dough later on, depending on the colors and things like that. So I always leave it at the same size as my mold and then deal with just having the excess amount. However, you can figure out the exact and then come back and change those ounces at any time, and I'll show you how to do that. Water is the next step. So the default is water as percent of oils, 38%. Now, if we click on this, water as a percent of oils is the simplest way to determine the amount of water used in your recipe. It is recommended that beginners use this method and use the default value of 38%. Now, 38% is fairly high in the water content. Not saying that's not a good place to start. It is just fairly high, and high water content can add to glycerin water, rivers, and soda ash and stuff. Now, it does say the more experienced users typically reduce this percentage to around 32 to 33%. I do mine a little bit lower than that for some of my recipes, but we're going to go with the 33%. Remember, the more water you have, the longer the curing time, things like that. But I always let my bars cure anyways for the 4 to 6 weeks as recommended. All right, which we will go over curing and drying in another video. So we're going to set this as water as percent of oils is 33%. okay, because that's a more reasonable number to start off with. You can do that 38% if that's a concern for you. Now you can see lye concentration, water and lye ratio is here. This is for the more experienced soap maker. I tend not to use the water to lye ratio too much myself. When we do get to that final recipe, it will go through and show you as it calculates the water to lye ratio, so you can get more familiar with that, what it actually is, or you can learn the water to lye ratio and use that as your measurements. All you have to do is click here and then put it in. But we're going to stay here with the 33%. All right, and then number 4 is going to be our super fat. Now, if this calculator figured it out exactly, which is what it's designed to do, we could have 0 super fat and every bit of lye should be used up by the amount of oils we used. However, remember I said we're not using those scientific precise molecule scales. We are using kitchen scales. So the way that we play it safe to make sure we don't have leftover lye is we super fat. That 5 to 8%. I've even seen people use 10%. Generally, I stick with the 5%, and that's just my go-to, and I've used that in every recipe and always had a good turnout with my bar. So we're just going to leave that super fat at 5%. Fragrance is the next one. Now their default is half an ounce, so 0.5 ounce per pound. In saying that, that's probably okay for most fragrance oils, but I don't actually change this until I'm making my batch of soap, simply because when we get to the fragrance oils and stuff, when we go over that, you'll see that every fragrance oil has a recommended percentage of use for soap or lotions or whatever you're using it for. Any reputable people that you are purchasing your fragrance from should either have on their webpage the recommendations from the manufacturer on percentage of fragrance used, and you should always follow that guideline for safety reasons. Some companies will even put it on the bottle. We'll go over that percentages and usage and how you find out that information when we get to the fragrance and color part of this series, but for now we're just going to leave it there, and we figure that out when we go to use this recipe to make the soap, depending on the fragrance oil we're going to use. So we'll just leave that there for now. Then we come down here to 5. So when you look here, you're going to see everything that we talked about in that first video. So we talked about what brings hardness, cleansing, conditioning, brings that bubble to the soap, what makes it creamy. This is all of that information here. Down here you'll see, and I mean, if you hover over top of it, it gives you information too, as you can see there. This is going to be your saturated, unsaturated fatty acids, just like we talked about in the video. You can click on here and it will take you to another page explaining what this acid is, okay, fatty acid is. But this tells you right here, okay, so that information is here, and anytime you click on, let's say we click on avocado butter, it is going to bring up what avocado butter properties is going to bring to that bar of soap. So as what it lends to the hardness, the cleansing, conditioning, that is what it's going to bring to that bar of soap. And then down here it also tells you what that oil is going to bring as far as your saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, so your solid or liquid oils. Okay, what properties it brings. Remember in the first video I stated that every oil will be a mixture of molecules. Well, this is what I meant by that. So when we look at this, when I click on avocado butter, it brings up that it does have palmitic acid, it does have stearic acid, it has oleic acid, right? So it's got all of these different molecules in it, and that's why you can't just create a recipe without having a calculator like this. And like I said, for us, because that's not so straightforward, this type of calculator breaks all of that down for us, so we use this to our advantage. If I change the type of oil, once again, it's going to change to the different types of saturated or unsaturated fatty acids, and you can see how many different kinds of molecules are actually in that oil or butter. Okay, so that's each of those. Now when we get to this and selecting and actually building our recipe over here, we're just going to simply double click on that oil, or you can push the add button over here. say we pick that one and we can click add, it will bring it over here. You can click minus and it will take that one away. All right, so we're going to pick the oils. Now I've just gathered a recipe off of the internet, and even if we gather a recipe off the internet or you get it from a website, you should always put it through a soap calculator yourself. Okay, it could be a typo in that recipe. You want to make sure your recipes are safe. So any recipe you use should always go through a soap calculator first, because that's what's going to tell you the amount of lyes that you need using that super fat ratio. So to make sure that there is enough oils to use up all of the lye that we put in there. So the basic recipe that I gathered, we are going to use coconut oil. 76 is usually the one that you'll receive when you purchase from a soap company supplier. So we're going to put canola oil, or coconut oil, sorry, in this recipe. We're also going to put olive oil. So we just go down to olive oil, we double click it, and it adds it to my recipe. Palm oil is another one in this recipe. Now, palm oil, some people don't like to use palm oil. I do use palm oil in some of my recipes. I do make sure that I am purchasing sustainable palm oil. But if you don't want to use palm oil, like I said in the previous video, that cocoa butter is another great alternative for that palm oil to replace that palmitic acid that we're looking for. And the other one is going to be our castor oil. Okay, so we find castor oil and we're going to put it in there. Now over here you can use percentages or you can switch it to ounces. So in saying that, when you calculate the recipe, it will give you the ounces or the percentages used. Depending if it was a recipe you found online and it only gave you the measurements in ounces, this will convert that to percentages for you. You should be able to convert all of your recipes to percentages rather than ounces. It just makes it a little bit more accurate. That's how I feel anyways. But I always enter my recipes in percentages. Just the percentage of amount of each oil I'm going to put in that recipe. So in this recipe, we're going to use 32% coconut oil. We're going to use 32% olive oil. We're going to use 32% palm oil. So those are all equal proportions. And then our castor oil, we're going to use 4%. So that is going to give us a total of 100%. So then I know that I have used up all of this 32 ounces will be transferred into these percentages for me. All right. So when I hit calculate recipe down at the bottom here where it says 7, you'll see that it gives me those ounces. Okay, according to these percentages. And if I'm in ounces and I hit calculate, it will give me the percentages of oils. So it does break that down for you. Okay. Then once you've hit calculate recipe, you're going to click view or print. Okay, so you're going to click that and it takes you to here. Now, this is where you're going to print your recipe off from. Up at the top here, you can see you can put in a recipe name so that when you print this off, especially if you're going to make this soap recipe for a specific bar that you're creating, you may want to label it or a certain size. We're just going to put 2 pound. I know this recipe is for a 2 pound mold. And anything that I change on here and add will print off on my final recipe. Down here, once again, you can put in where you've added additives if this is a specific recipe. Say you've added avocado or you've added clay, anything that you're going to add, you can put those in here. All right, and right here is any notes that you need to make for this recipe. You can put that in there so it prints right off. All right. Now, when we come into this total weight of oils, just like we put in the recipe, 32, so this is for my 2 pound mold. I know I will have a little excess left over. As you can see down here, total soap weight with my waters and lyes is going to be 48.2 ounces. I'm aware of that, but this is where you'll see your number. So if you want to make a soap recipe that is exactly, you can take this and you know that that's what's going to be added to it, and you can go back and you can adjust your ounces here. So if I was to put, I believe this would be 29 ounces, and then I hit calculate again, view and print, back to this page, and now I'm down to that 43.68. Okay, so that's still over my 2 pounds. Like I said, I always leave mine at the same size. So we're going to go back, make this 32. And now it's gone back to that 32 ounce. Okay, now we have our water as percent of oil of weights. We picked to do 33%. Okay, which is a good starting place. I wouldn't go any lower than that when you're first starting. The more you learn, then the more you can play around with that number. We know our super fat discount was 5%, so this will be printed on your recipe, so you know exactly what's going on with your recipe once you've put this into your recipe book. And this is where I said that lye concentration or water to lye ratio, it does figure it out at that 33%. So our water to lye ratio is going to be 2 to 2.7 to 1 for our lye. So we're going to have 2.2, 2.3 if you're around 2-1% lye ratio, okay, for our water to lye ratio. So you can see how that can get a little bit more confusing. I don't really use that. I use my percentages, but it does provide that information here. Over here you have your saturated fat to unsaturated ratio. This will always be 100%. So it's telling you that you're using 90 or 49% saturated fat and 51% unsaturated fat. And it goes through your ratios here. We left that as the default, and it's giving us 1 ounce because we're doing 2 pounds of oils. Okay, so that's your ratio, 2 pounds of oil. So we'll adjust that, and I can change that when I figure it out for my recipe itself. Right here, the ins. Now, just a common thing to remember where it says 166. That just as a little blurb on this, we don't hear people talk about this too much, but from looking at this number, I know this is going to set up a little bit faster on me. Anything 150 and lower is good for doing those really swirly soaps. Anything over 150 is going to set up, and you may not get as many swirls. Now, for this recipe, we're going to leave it like this because that's going to be okay. We're not going to do a bunch of fancy swirls and designs and stuff to start off with our first recipe. Maybe we'll do a pot in the pot swirl or something like that. That would be fine. So we'll leave that as is, but that's just good to know, and it also gives that number down here. Okay, so this is the amount of water. So when it figures out our 33%, it's going to calculate the amount of water we need, okay, in our recipe to have that 33% of oil weight. So our water is going to be, and as I said, pounds, ounces, grams. I always convert my recipes in ounces, but I do all my measurements in grams when I actually go to make my soap. Just, it seems a little bit more accurate for me, but it's fine to do it in ounces as well. But we can see that our water, I'm going to need 10.56 ounces of water for this recipe. And the lye that it figured out with that percentage, okay, of water to oils, so using our oils, what we need to use up all of that lye according to the amount of oils we're using, plus our 5% super fatting, we need 4.64 ounces or 131.45 grams of lye to use up, for the amount of oil we're using, to use up all of that lye, including that 5% super fatting. So we should have 5% extra oils beyond what our lye is to use all of that up. Okay, so that's the measurement we're going to use right here. Our oils, we know that that is 32 ounces. Okay, and that's our gram measurements. Fragrance, as I said, we'll figure that out later. Total weight is going to be 48.2. I'm aware of that it's going to be more than my mold, and that's okay. Like I said, I will use excess for soap dough, or I do a fancy top, okay, and make it a high top bar, which I just leave it at that. Now we get down into here where we have our oils. So we have our coconut, our olive, our palm, and our castor. We know we did that at 32% straight, and then our castor at 4, giving us 100%. Here's our weights, pounds, ounces, and grams. So this tells us how much of each oil we need for our measurement at those percentages to give us that 32 ounces of oil. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. You get your measurements off of here. Down here, just like on the previous page, and this will be printed out on your recipe, so when you go to look at this recipe, you don't have to put it back in a soap calc. You've already done that. It has all of the information so that it's all at your fingertips. So this is the range that we would like the bars in between, and you can see that my recipe that I've put in here, we're at 47 for hardness, so it's going to be a nice solid bar. It's going to be a very cleansing bar. We're at the top of that range. Conditioning is at 49, and it's anywhere between 44 to 69. Our bubbly is at 25, creamy 39, and then at that bottom number there, that 166, we know that this is going to set up a little bit quicker. All right, and then over here, once again, it's going to tell you all of your saturated and unsaturated fatty acids here and what it is you're bringing in using this recipe. So this is all of these oils together. All right, so it breaks everything down when you print this off. This is something that you just put in your recipe book. You know everything about this recipe by looking at it. After I make the soap and I do a testing on the soap, now I test my pH level in my soaps after, you know, they're cured. I also will use a bar of soap myself to test it. When I'm starting a new recipe, I always go through those steps, and I'll write in any notes here that I think that I might need, okay, for future use of this recipe. And that's as simple as it is. Okay, so down here you can also tap here and it gives you the graft, if that's a little bit easier for you to understand the grafting part of this. I don't ever print that graft off because I'm okay with these. And then up here is another thing that they've added. So if I was going to sell this bar of soap, on the labeling, I need to not just say it has coconut oil in it. I have to have that INCI name, so the scientific name for that ingredient. And it's kind of a nice little thing they've put in here, so we know this will be the name that I need to put, because this is the INCI name for these oils. So it supplies that for you if that's something that you're interested in. And then simply we just click print. Okay, and it will print this recipe off for us with any of the little notes or anything that we've put in here. We would click print. I'm not going to print this right now because I have this recipe printed off already, because I put it through there once I pulled it off the internet to make sure this was a good recipe to run you guys through. Okay, because this will be the recipe that we use in our final video to make soap together. All right, so that is as simple as that soap calculator is to use, and with watching that previous recipe, you have a better understanding of what all of this information here means on soap calc, so that you can go and play with the different oils and create or change recipes as you feel. Okay, so now that we've gone over soapcalc.net, you should have a clear understanding of how to use this soap calculator, and you should be able to go on there and play around and experiment and do some learning before we get to the end process of actually making this cold process soap. So the next video we're going to post in a few days is going to be on lye safety and equipment that we need. Alright, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you're not missing future videos, and you can hit that little bell so that you're notified when that video is uploaded. Thanks for watching.